Probate is a court process that your estate has to go through when you die if you have a will or you have no estate plan at all. Today we're going to talk about how you can avoid probate and why you might want to. I'm estate planning attorney Mike Smith with Smith Barid LLC, and I'm one half of the estate planning guys. So probate is a court process that is required when you die if you have a will or if you die intestate where you have no plan at all, no will, no trust. The process goes like this. So the executor will file a petition with the court to begin the probate. That petition asks the court to appoint the executor who is named in the will. The executor has no authority, no power over any of the assets in the estate until the court finishes that process of appointing them. So you name an executor in your will, but that person has no power or authority until the court actually vests them with that power and appoints them as the executor. Once the executor is appointed, then there's a process of notifying any creditors out there who may be owed money from the estate that the probate has been filed. They have an opportunity to come forward and file claims against the estate. And once that process concludes, then the executor begins the business of determining who needs to get paid and how to distribute the remaining assets. So the executor uses a priority of claims, pays off any claims that have been made against the estate, and then once that's completed, then whatever is left of the estate at that point is distributed out to the beneficiaries pursuant to the instructions that are left in the will. Or if the person died intestate and there is no will at all, then pursuant to state law. And there is a series of rules, they're called the rules of descent and distribution, that cover how assets in an intestate estate are distributed out to the family. So if you're interested in learning more about how we help families protect their legacies from probate, predators, and government intrusions, I wrote a free book titled The Ultimate Gift that lays it all out. If you'd like to pick up your free copy of The Ultimate Gift, simply click the link below, give us your address and a credit card for shipping and handling fees, and we'll ship it out to you free of charge. Read The Ultimate Gift so you can learn how to protect your family. So basically, if you don't do an estate plan, the state has one for you, and it might not be what you want. So that's the probate process. It can be very time consuming. It can be very expensive. It can take anywhere from months to years to conclude. You have to pay an attorney. There are court costs. There are publication fees. It can be an expensive and time consuming process. So a lot of times clients come to me and they say, hey, I've heard about this probate thing. I don't want any part of that. How can I avoid probate? So there's a couple of ways to do that. Let's look at first how we can do that without having to do any kind of special estate planning. So in our world, we think of assets as being either probate assets or non-probate assets. And if we can convert all of our assets into non-probate assets, then we can completely avoid probate without having to do any kind of fancy estate planning. So how can we do that? So let's first define what probate and non-probate assets are. So non-probate assets are anything for which there is a beneficiary named. So think about, for example, an IRA. You name a beneficiary for an IRA, so it doesn't have to go through probate. You have a contract with the custodian of the IRA, and they agree that when you pass away, they're going to distribute the assets in the IRA pursuant to the instructions that you've left on the beneficiary designation form. Or think about a life insurance policy. You've named a beneficiary on the life insurance policy, and you and the insurance company have agreed that when you die, the insurance company will distribute the benefits under the life insurance policy pursuant to that beneficiary designation that you've given them. Now, there are other types of assets that you can convert into non-probate assets. So let's talk about those. Probate assets are basically going to be anything else. So you think about your bank account, your house, if it's not titled properly, your cars, etc., etc. Anything that doesn't have a beneficiary designation on it is going to be a probate asset and therefore subject to that court proceeding. So how can we convert those probate assets into non-probate assets? So let's take some specific examples. First, let's talk about bank accounts. You can go to the bank and instruct them to set your bank account up as a pay-on-death account. What that means is you will name a beneficiary for the account, and when you die, the bank will transfer that account over to the person that you've named on that pay-on-death designation without having to go through probate, get permission from anybody. The bank will just transfer that over automatically to the person that you've designated. Likewise, if you have joint accounts. So for a husband and wife, if you own your bank accounts together as joint tenants with right of survivorship, that means that when one of you dies, the account will automatically transfer to the survivor without having to go through any kind of probate proceedings, no legal mess. It just automatically transfers over. Now, to take another specific type of asset, with real estate, we can do the same thing by creating a joint tenancy deed. And so if you purchase a new home, you can instruct the closing attorney, and some states have different types of tenancies, but a joint tenancy with rights of survivorship, when the first spouse dies, the property automatically transfers to that joint tenant without having to go through probate. Just by operation of law, poof, it just magically happens when one of the joint tenants dies. So you could own joint tenancy property with your spouse, with your child, any family member that you wanted to, or anybody else that you wanted to. And then when you die, by operation of law, just magic, poof, that property is going to transfer over to the other joint tenants without having to go through probate. So that's a way that we can convert real estate from being a probate asset into a non-probate asset. You can do the same thing with brokerage accounts. So if you have a brokerage account with one of the brokerage houses, you can instruct them to set up a pay on death beneficiary on that, and it will automatically transfer without having to go through the probate process. So many types of assets you can convert from probate into non-probate assets. And if you have a pretty simple situation, then you could create an estate that doesn't need a probate just by setting up things with pay on death beneficiaries or creating joint tenancies. But what if you have a more complicated situation? So maybe you're a business owner and you have a partner in your business, or you own some rental real estate with a partner. How can we convert those assets so that we don't have to deal with probate? In that kind of situation, we would use something called a revocable living trust. And the revocable living trust is simply a bucket into which you put your assets, and as long as you're alive and you're competent, you're in full control of the bucket. So you're holding the handle to the bucket, you control all the assets in it, you can do whatever you want to with them. If you become incapacitated, the person that you've chosen as your successor trustee will take over the handle to the bucket and manage those assets without having to get permission from anybody. And then most importantly, when you die, because you have this trust bucket, your family doesn't have to probate your estate. You've named a successor trustee in your trust, and that person's just going to take over the trust at that point, follow the instructions that you've left for administering the trust, distribute the assets out of it, pay any debts that are due, and they're going to take care of all that without having to go through that court process that we talked about. So it's much cheaper, it's simpler for your family member to deal with, and it takes much less time. So that's 2 ways your family can avoid probate when you pass away. Make sure to get the right kind of plan in place so that your family doesn't have to go through that process. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, then take a moment right now to subscribe by clicking below and turn on the bell notification so you get notified every time we post up a new video. Right now we're posting 3 videos a week with lots of information about various estate planning topics, so you're going to want to make sure to stay on top of that. Click below to subscribe and click right over here to watch the next most relevant video about estate planning. Go watch it now.